I have a critic that lives out here.
I know you do.
You know, and the critic talks to me, and finally I have to say, hey, fuck you, man.
Right.
You know, thanks for sharing. Kevin Kline and I, we were carrying we had to carry a king, a very large actor whose name I'm not going to mention. He was so large that the king's throne that we were carrying broke on the stage. And Kevin and I had to improvise a whole scene around it.
Today on the Seano Show, we sit down with a man who has lived a dozen lives in one lifetime. He's an actor, a director, a producer, a storyteller with the heart that beats for truth. James Keach has spent his career walking the line, from riding with his brother in The Long Riders, which, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best Westerns ever, producing the Oscar-winning Walk the Line and capturing raw humanity in Glen Campbell's I'll Be Me, which is, to me, one of the most honest portrayals of love, loss, and resilience ever put to film. I can't wait to talk to you about that. What I love about James is the why. He doesn't just make movies, he makes mirrors. Stories that help us see ourselves more clearly. So today we're diving into craft, purpose, legacy, and what it means to stay true in an industry built on illusion. This is my brother, James Keach, living out loud, straight from the heart on the Seano Show. Welcome, brother.
Hello, Seano.
Hi, welcome. Thanks. Oh, man, I love you. Thank you.
You too, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love you too.
I know you do, man.
So does my whole family.
Yeah, so does your whole family. Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we just start? Where were you born, young man?
What?
Where were you born?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I was born in New York.
You're born in New York?
Yeah, Queens.
Yeah, Queens. And
Spent my first 10 years in Texas with my grandmother. And so my feeling is like I come from a small town, and my dad was in show business. My brother was in show business. So we lived out in California, but they parked me there because he was doing a show called Tales of the Texas Rangers.
It's in the blood.
It's in the blood.
Yeah. Mom, dad?
Mom, dad. My dad and mom met at Northwestern. My dad was an actor. At one time he had 30, 40 national commercials on the air.
Wow.
He was Clarence Birdseye. He was a sweetheart, my dad. You know, child of the Depression. His dad died when he was 9. His mom when he was 18. And my mom came from Texas oil money. So it was totally the opposite, you know.
And tell us about young James Keach.
Young James Keach. Well, my childhood was interesting. You know, it was, as you know about my childhood. Yeah, there was some tough patches.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't because of my parents. It was because of...
No, your parents were nothing but kind. And
yeah, but they couldn't deal with it. It was a time when the Me Too movement wasn't in effect for your friends' mothers and little boys.
Right.
So that's the most tactful way I can put this.
And tactful it is. And that obviously had a massive imprint on your life.
Yeah. Yeah, sure did. And all the relationships I've had with women. If
you don't mind, what do you think has been the greatest impact from that?
In the ultimate sense of working, the effect that it had on my life, I think whatever happened, it happened before. Look, I'll just be honest. I was molested when I was a kid. So, yeah, it happened before I was molested by a female. Yeah, by a female. Which, you know, so often people think, well, this is not something it's cool. Young boys. Well, I was 12, 13 years old. So I wasn't 18 years old like in The Reader or 19, you know. I was a little young for this, and I didn't really know how to deal with it. But I think it also came from the fact that my mom, who I love very much, came from South Texas, and her parents divorced when she was very little, and she wore the Scarlet Letter. I don't know if you know that story, the Scarlet Letter. They put adulterer on, and her dad.
I didn't know that with your mom. Wow.
Yeah, and she ran off with he ran off with somebody, and so anyway, she was very, very, very hard for her to deal with her feelings, and so she masked all her feelings. So when this happened to me, she did not want the world to know about it, and my dad didn't either. Today, it would have been a big deal, you know. And but then, my dad was in the business, and this other person, his husband, was definitely in the business in a big way. So hide all your feelings. Don't let the world know what's going on.
And just eat it.
Eat it. That had a big effect on me. And so secrets and hiding was something that I was taught by my parents.
Right.
It's a little confusing, so you go through your life, and when you get into a relationship, it's very difficult for me anyway, to be straight up about it when you have a problem.
And I think it's important to say that it wasn't a one-off. It was a continue.
Yeah, it was 3 years.
3 years. So,
Yeah.
right.
It's funny, during my lifetime, I've seen this happen, and prosecutions take place, and people go to jail, women go to jail for doing something like this. I've never been able to really process it. I always felt bad for her. She was alcoholic. She had an abusive husband, but for a 12-year-old to think they're saving somebody is
there's a false loyalty.
It's very confusing. But it's what happened. I've never talked about this publicly.
I know you haven't, and I wasn't, and I think you might help some people though.
Maybe. Well, there's a saying that we're only as sick as our secrets.
Yeah.
And this happened. That's not it's not who I am now.
No.
But it did have a profound effect on me throughout my life.
Right. James, when did you know that you were good as an actor? Were you performing young?
When I was in high school, I was a football player. I was an athlete more than anything,
right, yes.
And my brother, Stacy, he's a great guy. I just saw him in a movie with George Clooney, and we saw it last night. It's called Joe Kelly. It's really good.
Joe Kelly?
Yeah, he plays.
Oh, Stacy's in it?
Yeah, he plays Clooney's dad.
Oh,
and George is such a good guy. And Stacy's a great actor. Anyway, so it was my brother who said, "You're the actor. You should be the one." My brother was born with a cleft palate. So, and my dad was an actor, and he absolutely doted on my brother. He had 5 or 6 operations on his cleft palate, and he taught him Shakespeare in order to speak properly, because people with cleft palate talk like that a little bit. And my mom and dad always said, "Well, he was born perfectly. There's nothing wrong with him." Okay.
They taught him Shakespeare. That's amazing. Dad had that kind of wisdom.
Yeah, my dad was very cool.
What an incredible thing.
That's sad. And so my brother, we both were Shakespearean actors, both Yale Drama School guys, but Stacy was extraordinarily good at Shakespeare, and has played every major part you can play, Wow. So, yeah. So.
But you studied acting at Northwestern?
Yeah.
And then you got into Yale?
Yeah.
And what was that like?
It was interesting. It was good. I remember I was at Yale and Martin Luther King was killed, and the riots, and it was very interesting during those times.
Wow.
Yale was a hotbed.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
What was your first big break?
Oh, I was at the New York Shakespeare Festival, and I was carrying spears, literally, next to Kevin Kline.
Oh,
yeah. It was called The War of the Roses. And I had an agent. I auditioned for a movie called Corky, and and it was an MGM movie. And Bruce Geller, who created Mission Impossible, was the producer. And they flew me out to California. Literally was carrying spears, and I got the part in the movie. And Joe Papp, who ran the New York Shakespeare Festival, was not happy that I would take a part in a movie and not carry spears.
Wow.
Huh? I mean, I tell you, that's a funny story of Kevin Kline. That we were carrying we had to carry a king, a very large actor whose name I'm not going to mention, but he was so large that the king's throne that we were carrying broke on the stage. And Kevin and I had to improvise a whole scene around it. So I came to California and was offered this part and was offered a lot of money, and then about 2 weeks later, after I left the Shakespeare Festival, my agent called at the time and said, "James, they've changed the head of the studio, and they no longer want you to play the part because you don't have a name. They want to give it to somebody who's got a bigger name than you do." And I didn't know what to say, but they have to pay you. But they got to pay you. I said, "Oh, well, okay, well, what should I do?" She said, "Well, I don't know. That's up to you. And I said, they offered you the second lead. I said, after reading it, okay. I mean, I was carrying Spears, and they still had to pay me. I just wanted to act, and about 2 weeks later, I drove to California thinking I'm getting ready to go to make the movie. As I got here, I was with an agency at that time called CMA, which later became ICM. And she said, "Oh, I've got bad news for you. They don't want you to play the second part anymore.
Oh, God.
They want you to play the third lead. They'll offer you the third lead, but they still have to pay you." And I said, "Well, what should I do?" And she said, "Well, what kind of a man are you?" So what does that mean? She said, "Well, you're going to let him walk over you like that?" I said, "No, if you think I shouldn't do it, I won't do it. They still have to pay me, right?" Yeah. I never heard from her again. I got the money. She never sent me out another thing.
Wow.
So that was my first Hollywood break. Welcome to Hollywood.
Wow.
So
And were you partying then?
no.
You were
I
straight
was
then?
No, I was
A little weed here and there.
straight. I was smoking grass, but
Yeah.
none of the bad stuff.
None of the bad stuff.
That came later.
That you'll tell me when to interject that. Okay.
Yeah, that came later.
But walk me. So how old are you now? So you're in 25, 26?
Yeah, about that old. No, it's a little younger than that. About 20, 24, 25.
And are you like, fuck, am I going to make it as an actor? Like, fuck, I know.
I never thought about that.
What were you thinking then? What was going through your head? Were you happy? Were you scared?
I've always been a little not believe I'm. I always knew that I was good at acting. I mean, I've always been very self-deprecating.
Yeah, I know.
It's like I don't know. Other people telling me I've done a good job, but I never really. I just do it, and it's like I said, doing this. I have a critic that lives out here.
I know you do. Yeah.
And the critic talks to me, and finally I have to say, "Hey, fuck you, man."
Right.
Thanks for sharing.
Right.
And I think that's what I always tell when I direct actors, and I've done a lot of that. I always tell them to talk to the critic and tell them to be quiet, to stop it, to fuck off. My brother, however, taught me something very interesting when I first started acting, because when the camera was pointed to me for the first time, I mean, it's one thing to be on the stage. You get rehearsals and rehearsals and rehearsals, so you're ready for it. When you're movie acting, that's not the case most of the time. But my brother, I said, "How do you get over that camera being there?" And he showed me a trick that he used. He said, "I say good morning." Those days, the cameras were all Mitchells. And he'd say, "Good morning, Mitch. How are you today? How you feeling? We're going to have a good day, you and me."
I love that.
So-
Wow. Did it work?
Yeah.
When did you get after that? You got paid. And then what happens next? You landed something, right?
Yeah. I went back to New York, and I started my brother. The next thing happened is I did a movie with my brother. It was called The Wright Brothers, Orville and Wilbur. It's considered one of the top movies on PBS. So they call it one of the PBS classics. And Nancy and I, my wife, current wife, watched it just out of curiosity. She tuned into it, and I was really young and very thin. Anyway, and I played Orville, and my brother played Wilbur. And it was at that time I started thinking about playing Jesse James. And so go from the Wright brothers to the Wrong brothers. Wilbur couldn't have been more opposite than Jesse James.
What was it about Jesse James that was you started thinking like, this would be a great character, I want to play him? Yeah.
I'd always thought this story was great, and so I created a country western musical. So it was a musical when I started. So I was really into music and playing music and stuff like that.
Wait, I didn't know that part about that.
It was called The Bandit Kings. And so we did it off Broadway at Bowery Lane Theater.
And then how in the fuck did you make that movie with all the brothers?
I then got a part. I came back to California, and I got a part in Hurricane with Mia Farrow, and which is just a kind of a cool story in and of itself. This is the opposite of losing your job the way I did the first time. I auditioned for this part in the Hurricane. Jan Troll worked with Ingmar Bergman. Sven Nykvist was Ingmar Bergman's cameraman. He was the cinematographer.
Wow.
Dino De Laurentiis was producing it. I came in to the office And I remember Mike McLean was the casting director, who nobody's going to remember, but he was a cool guy. And Dino is sitting at this really huge desk. Dino was not a big guy.
Nice,
and he's
tiny,
sitting
right?
there and he's counting, he's got a roll of money and he's counting $100 bills. He looks up and he goes, "He's a perfect. Make him a deal." And I went, "That's it?" Mike McLean said, "Shut up and get out of here."
Wow.
I was on my way to Bora Bora. And
Wow.
it was in Bora Bora. The producer of that movie was a guy named Tim Zinnemann. And he says, "So what are you working on right now?" I said, "I'm writing a screenplay for this thing called, it was either Jesse James or the Bandit Kings." And he said, and my brother and I got the Carradine brothers and maybe the Bridges brothers. I mean, we were all kind of tight with each other. We kind of grew up with the Carradines. Our dads knew each other.
Wow. Quaits too?
I didn't know the Quaits.
You didn't know them?
No, but Dennis and I actually are still best friends.
Yeah.
All the time. I see him all the time. Tim said, "That sounds really cool." He said, "Can I read it?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'm going to give it to a friend of mine." "Oh, yeah? Who's that?" He said, "Walter Hill." Yeah.
At that time, what did Walter Hill do?
He had just done The Warriors.
The Warriors. That's right.
Yeah.
Warrior. Right. Wow.
He's a great guy, great film director.
Wow. And he nailed it.
He nailed it.
He nailed it.
Yeah.
Why is that such a spectacular film? I mean, it really,
Well, a lot of it has to do with Walter, but there's something unspoken when you have two guys that have known each other their whole life, like my brother and I. Obviously, he's 7 years older than I am. You don't have to say things. We look at each other, and it's there. The chemistry is there, and all of us. It was a familial thing. So this whole idea of a band of brothers, well, we definitely were that. When somebody knows you that intimately, and you say the words "I love you" to the guy, it's real. There's something that was very real about that whole experience with all of us, and we're very close to this day, except for Randy and Dennis, which I feel bad about. But that's another story.
I don't think you could ever make a movie like that ever again, can you? I don't think that happens again. Brothers like that, I just don't see that ever happening. I mean, you really captured something magical in that time period. Wow. When's the last time you saw it?
It's been a while.
Been a while?
Yeah. I have other people that see it. It's on TV quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dennis still calls me Jesse. He jokingly says I helped make his career. I said, "How's that, man?" He said, "You broke my nose." We had a fight scene on the river, and I still say he slipped.
Yeah.
He said, You reached out too far, and I broke his nose.
Acting wise, what are you most proud of?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I did a lot of comedies too back in the day.
Yes, you did.
I was with a young film director today, and he was saying he had all the films that I'd done on Blu-ray, and he was talking, he was reminding me of scenes that I had forgotten about, whether it's Wildcats or Moving Violations or Vacation, and I think Vacation is one of those scenes it says it all in one scene, the scene I do with Chevy about the dog, and it's considered one of the classic scenes in comedy, and it was really weird that day because I remember I got off the plane. It was in the Four Corners, and Harold Ramis, he was directing it, and he and I had been working on a movie that I was one of the writers on called Armed and Dangerous. It was an original idea about security guards with John Candy.
John Candy. Yeah.
So he said, "Hey, James, come on down and do this part for me." And I said, "Okay, now." He said, Just do me a favor, I got a lot of work from that part. Anyway, I got off the plane in Durango, and I remember people were just freaked out when I got to the set. And I said, "What's going on?" He said, Vic Morrow had just died, and it was the night before, and this little Vietnamese boy was killed, and John Landis had told the helicopter to go. Anyway, I just remember that day very well. And part of that relief from that day was playing in this comedy scene with both Chevy and I. and we had to just channel something else because everybody was so freaked out because we were doing the film for Warner Brothers, the same studio.
When did you make the leap into directing? And
I did a movie called it was one of the first USA movies, USA Television, and it was called The Forgotten, and it won a lot of awards. It was about Vietnam guys, and it was about, at that time there was some speculation that we had basically tipped off Vietnamese that some of our guys were coming in. The Paris Peaks toss were going on, and we had guys going in undercover to do some stuff. And there was this whole collusion that they thought was going on. And the movie was about our guys finding out that our government had betrayed them and they were going in on an operation, and they were sacrificing our own guys to show good faith. It won all sorts of awards. And I did it with my brother and Keith Carradine and Steve Railsback, and pretty good actors at the time.
Wow.
That's the story I told you. It won the Veterans Award or something. It was really it was a really good film.
You're proud of that movie?
I'm very proud of that film. Yeah. But even more so, I got one of the great lessons of my life when I went to the VA hospital.
Well, you were screening the films, right?
I screened the film. They
right?
said, please go down to Houston and screen the film. And it was my lesson in acceptance. I had gone through my Coke period. I was done with it by this point. The Coke period didn't last long, but boy, was it intense. It was for all of us,
Yeah.
At that time. In Hollywood, the drivers were giving you Coke.
Yeah, it was
So it was like, hey, man, I'm done with this stuff. And I was very sober at that time. And I walked into this guy's room. I think I've told you this story.
Yeah, but this is a great story, though.
It's a story. I walked into the room, and there was a man sitting on his bed, and he was turned away. He was facing the wall over there, and I looked up on the wall behind him, and I said what he was facing, and there was the Serenity Prayer, and I said, "Hey, man, that's my favorite prayer." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to create a conversation. And so God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I love that prayer. He says without turning around, "Well, sir, what's the most important word?" Well, I thought he's a soldier, guy in combat. It's got to be courage. He turned around. No, sir. He had half face. He'd been blown off. Acceptance, sir. Acceptance. So that was a huge lesson out of that film. Forget the film for a second. That moment changed my life.
Why did it change your life?
Well, because so many things in my life, and it has over and over and over. Every time I tell the story, I relive the idea that we are all the same. That guy probably feels the same way I do. But when I get so self-involved, when I think it's all about me and poor me, or, I didn't get that part, or I didn't, whatever. And I think of him. And I go, no, sir. Acceptance. It's an important thing. I mean, that is a key, I think, to having a good life. And self-forgiveness, and just so many things, on a spiritual level that he taught me. Show business doesn't teach you that shit.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. No, in fact, it's quite the opposite. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. Show business has been good to me in a lot of ways, but it's taken something too from me. It does for you. Everybody pays a price for fame. Everybody pays a little bit of a price. It takes a little bit of your soul. You just have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of other people and what they feel. And so often, my father, the one big lesson, I remember it so well, what he said to me, we just had seen the original MASH, and we were walking out, and we saw it at the Cinerama Dome years ago.
Wow. Cool.
And we walked outside and we'd seen MASH, and I didn't know what my mom and dad would think of it, because all we were smoking dope and Sally Kellerman was hot. You know, it was really a great movie. Robert Altman, who's a friend who I did a movie with. But my dad said, you know, the one thing you must never do, I don't know why he said this that day, because there was nothing to provoke it. He said, you must not be indifferent and apathetic to the plight of others. I think he was seeing some people walking down the street who had less than other people. And that's something that I have felt.
Can you say that again? That was so beautiful.
Do not be indifferent. The one thing he abhorred were people who were indifferent and apathetic to the plight of others. My dad was the kind of guy who, he went to hospitals and read to people who nobody went to visit on Sundays. And I didn't find out about this till he was, I think, dying. My mom told me. You know, the old saying, do something for somebody and don't let anybody good.
Yes.
And don't let something that you did. He did that. So I think I've carried that forward in terms of
Very
my
much
work,
so.
especially in the documentary work that I do. Part of the thing I look for and it's not negative, what I'm going to say, or dark, but I do look for the early childhood trauma. I guess it's because I have it in myself. And so I look to identify the commonality that I have with the people that I'm making films about, even if they're women, you know. Well, I did Linda Ronstadt, which we're working on right now with Miramax. So it's just, you know, she was a young Mexican girl who wasn't allowed to speak Spanish. None slapping her hand.
Right.
You know?
Shame.
And
nobody knows the shame business like you, brother.
Well, I think it would be the opposites, you know? I think nobody knows the shame business like you.
Okay. Well,
So,
maybe,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, you're in the business of helping people with shame. But I mean, for example, the Glen Campbell movie, No Shame in the Game. Johnny Cash, when we make Walk the Line, he was a dear friend. He had shame. And his father put the shame on him, but you know, his brother was supposed to be the preacher, and he
had to sing a song.
Yeah, he did have to sing songs, and you know, but it's like his dad. He always felt his father didn't think the right person died.
You know, I want to add to this. I want to stay with this thing, buddy. I was talking to a friend, was asking who my guest was, and I told him. He said, I'm not familiar with James's work. And I told him some of the things you did, including the documentaries. And he's like, what? Like, how did he didn't, and he's a savvy guy. And I said, well, you have people, Johnny Cash, Glen Campbell, Linda Ronstadt, and go on, and we're going to talk about it. They trust you.
Yeah.
They trust you, man.
Yeah.
Because you're trustworthy and you speak the language.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow you've taken, I mean, it's really powerful. Like, how did you meet Johnny Cash? Let's talk about that. Let's just start there.
I was directing Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
God, right.
This is a cool story about John. My brother, he was doing a show called Mistral's Daughter. It was a mini-series. So Cash was driving down Laurel Canyon, and my dad had a little production company, and it was at Stacy Keach Productions. And apparently John pulled and we'd already made the Long Riders, right? And so John pulls the car, his bus has a bus driver pull over, and he goes in and he says, I'm looking for Stacy Keach. He said, and my dad said, well, that's me. My dad was just there with his secretary. And he said, well, I want to see your boys. And he said, well, they're not here. He said, well, Mr. Keach, could I talk to you for a few minutes? He and my dad sat down and talked for an hour and a half. That's the kind of guy John was. And to the day he died, John would say, how's Mr. He'd call my mom when my dad was sick. He'd call my mom.
Wow.
Yeah. I kind of knew him before. And then by that point, when he started to do this Dr. Quinn show, he knew that I was directing, and I've been directing other things. And he said, I'll do the show if James directs it.
Wow. Wow.
Right. And he knew I was with Jane at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and then we became really good friends. He's the godfather. He and June are the godfather of our kids. And Johnny, my son, who you know, named after the little man in black. But he asked me to he asked me to do a story. And because he said to me, you know, I've been asked to do this before. And he said, I don't trust anybody in Hollywood. He said, they're not going to, they don't get me, because he was a very deep believer in God. But he wasn't a proselytizing type of man. In fact, he had one of those big churches down the street from where he lived in Hendersonville, and he couldn't stand it. He just thought they were exploiting people. But he would sit down, and when I would visit him, he'd read the Bible with me. He'd say, look at this passage. And he taught me about different things in the Bible.
Yeah, you were great pals, I remember. And then how long after his passing did the movie come out?
We thought John would die before June. John had been suffering from Shy-Drager. It's a very weird ailment. I knew John so well that his skin literally, because he'd taken so many drugs, his skin was literally peeling off his hand, and he would ask me to put it back on.
Wow.
But that's how tight we were.
Wow.
He was one of my teachers, and June couldn't have been. She was as sweet as she could be. But we thought that John would pass first, and it was June.
Right.
And just a few weeks before he passed, John said to me, he called and he said, I'm going to see June soon, I think. I said it at the Golden Globes when we won the Golden Globe. June said to me, James, I'm worried. Why, June? She'd read the script. She said, Vivian has a bigger part than I do. And I said,
that's okay.
June, you're the protagonist. John is supposed to be the antagonist and the protagonist, but you're the true protagonist. And when Reese won the Academy Award, I went, see, June? When we won the Golden Globe, I looked up at the sky and I said, see, June? I told you, you're the one.
Wow.
And she was great. They're great people.
You must be very proud of that film.
I am. I'm very proud. I feel incredibly fortunate that I got to work on all these films, because these people have influenced so many people's lives. And, and I know that in a little part, by carrying who they were and looking at who they truly were, not the facade, not the thing that they want you to see. It's when they allow the curtain to go back. And you're right, they trusted me. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting in a hotel room with John, and he had told me some stories about his uncle, who was a sheriff in Arkansas, and the way they treated certain people. And it was not good. Mm-hmm. John, his hands he was kind of like a Parkinson's thing. He said, I can't put that. You can't do that. You can't tell that. I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, I don't need to do that. So we don't need to say that about your family. I said, you said it in the way you dealt with other people. You said it the way you lived your life. You've made up for it.
Did you know Joaquin was the guy?
Yeah, I knew he was the guy when I saw him do it. When I first met him, I didn't know what to think.
I bet.
I just knew the incredibly talented guy, really very interesting personality.
Well, he did nail it. Yeah.
He had the darkness of John.
Exactly.
And Reese had the goodness of June.
That's my favorite thing that you ever did.
Oh, no.
And I was blessed to be with you when you were making that.
Yeah. Well, we're working on the narrative film right now, and it's fantastic. It's going to be.
How did Glen Campbell come in your consciousness?
As you know, we talked about, we did Walk the Line, and Julian Raymond, who was nominated for an Academy Award for writing the song, I'm Not Gonna Miss You. He was producing for Warner Brothers, and I'd met a manager at a party, and my son Johnny, who's a really great musician, this guy was a music manager. I wanted them to hear his songs because I was curious to see what they thought. And they liked him. They thought, yeah, this guy can really write songs. And so they sent over this guy, Julian Raymond. By the way, we've done 5 movies together now at this point. He and I became very close, Julian. He said, hey, I'm producing Glen Campbell. Would you be interested in doing Glen Campbell's story. I said, I don't think I want to do another biopic at this point. Another one. He says, no, I'm not talking about that. He's doing a concert tour and maybe just do a few shows. He's got Alzheimer's. And I went, what? He's got what? Yeah, I was very resistant to it. I took him 6 months to convince me to do it, until finally one day he said, Glenn is coming over to your house with his wife, Kim, and they want to meet you. He said, just meet him. And he came in the house, Glenn and Kim, both of them. And Johnny, my son, I think he was 14 at the time, was walking across the living room. He's got a guitar in his hand. And Glenn says, hey, I play guitar. You want me to show you something? And Johnny goes, wow, sure. And Glenn picks it up and just shreds it, doing all these scales up and down, you know, and he says, my Uncle Boo taught me that. You do that and you'll be really good. Now, Glen Campbell's one of the greatest guitar players that ever lived. Okay. So Johnny takes the guitar and he goes back into his bedroom. That's all teenagers do. And Kim goes, so James, we're here. We want to talk about you doing this with us. And Glenn's got Alzheimer's. I don't got no Alzheimer's. I got part-timers. So immediately I'm laughing like you. I'm like, oh, this guy's got a great sense of humor, which he did, an unbelievable sense of humor. And she says, and then Glenn turns to Kim and he goes, when a man findeth a good woman, he findeth a good thing.
Wow. I
found me a good thing. He said, Kim, Glenn, James doesn't want to hear about you talking about me. And at that point, Johnny comes walking out of the bedroom again. He's got his guitar. And Glenn says, hey, I play guitar. You want me to show you something?
Oh, wow.
So at that moment, I got to see how much he loved his wife, a great sense of humor, and he's got Alzheimer's. And I went, I have to do this.
That was the moment when you realized?
Yeah, that was it. We thought we were going to do 5 shows. It turned into 171.
Right.
It changed my life doing that show. That's what I meant, Nancy, and all that. The rest is history.
James, walk anybody. I mean, this is a absolute must see. The scenes where Glenn is forgetting the lyrics to his songs.
And the audience finishes the lyrics.
And the audience, I mean, that is to me one of the most touching things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Tell the audience, will you walk through what that process of being on that film and him, and there was some tough moments, obviously.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, you know, Glenn didn't have a perfect life by any means. By the time he was doing this show, he was playing casinos and, you know, I mean, Indian casino. It was funky what was going on. But he was still Glen Campbell, and he still had could sing like a bird and play. But critics were writing about him because when he would forget his lyrics, they say he was drunk because Glenn had some problems with alcohol he was alcoholic. And as soon as the audience realized no shame, and he came out and said, I'll tell everybody what I have. He said, and I would always say, there's no shame in his game. The vibe in the audience completely changed. So all of a sudden he became human. He was no longer Glen Campbell star.
Right.
He was Glen Campbell, human being, who's just like you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's the whole thing, like I started talking about, making films about these people. That's what we get to.
Mm-hmm.
We get to, they're just like you and me. And so if I can tell the audience, show the audience their humanity and touch them, then I've done my job. But ultimately, I'm the beneficiary of what they've taught me. And so I guess that's what I look for. I keep thinking, well, what are they teaching me as I'm doing this?
Did I get this right, buddy? He's going to get a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys. And on the way, he didn't know where he was at. He was
Glenn?
going.
Yeah. No, he didn't know where he was going.
You're in with him, right?
Yeah.
You're going down to the Staples Center at the time.
Yeah, we're going to the Staples Center. He says, where am I going? He says, we're going to go get the Lifetime Achievement Award. I am? I got a Lifetime Achievement Award? He says, yeah, Glenn. He says, oh, that's nice. Where am I going? The great story is, well, there's a lot of great stories, but how I got the name of the movie.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We're
I missed that.
we're out at Trevor's house, who's my partner on the film, Trevor Albert. Trevor lived in Malibu. His house burned down just like mine, so he's
Yeah,
not.
right
That's
on.
why I live, past tense. Anyway, he's sitting out in this balcony. He's looking out in the ocean. He sees little twinkles out there, little boats. Glenn goes, "Hey, what's that?" "Those are boats, Glenn. No, they're out there in the harbor." Oh, what have you been up to?" "I've been making a movie about you, Glenn." "Oh, what's that?" "Those are boats, Glenn. They're out there, you know, they're anchored out there." "Oh, well, this went on for what have you been up to?" "I've been making a movie about you, Glenn." This was about 5-10 minutes. We've been just sitting there, and he was playing a little bit on his guitar. "What's that out there?" I said, "Those are boats, Glenn." "What have you been up to?" "I'm making a movie about you." "Well, I'll be me."
Wow.
I went, fuck. Fantastic.
Well, I'll be me.
Well, I'll be me.
And that's exactly what happened, man.
Yeah, man.
Audience, please watch this brilliant film, Catching the Spirit of Glen Campbell, and bring his family. It's Greg Allman. That's good, premiering in Austin next week.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
I might.
And Ronstadt, that was one of my favorites too.
What do you want to talk about, Greg and Linda? What
I'll
then
talk
we'll talk
about
about
whatever
that.
you
I got
talk
some
about. I
other
just
questions.
love Linda. Linda's story is incredible, and so is Greg's, and so is David Crosby, and so is Augie, and some of these other folks.
Yeah, there's too many. I mean, which one do you want to talk about? We'll talk about one more.
I think Greg, especially to the community that you, I think has following you. I mean, I think I sent it to you for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
Because I think that the movie really, hopefully, will help everybody who struggles with addiction and give them a little bit of hope for what he says in his closing words, which if I could save one person from the hell I've been through, this will all have been worth it. And drugs and alcohol, that's all a lie, man. That's all a lie.
Yeah.
And it's a movie about, obviously, one of the greatest singers of all time, one of the greatest bands of all time. But it's also about early childhood trauma. I related when they asked me to make the movie, and I said, so I just, his brother died when he was 24. His brother was 24. And
one of the greatest guitarists of all time.
Of all time.
Right.
Yeah. And they just blew up. They're the biggest band in America. I mean, they were huge. 7 marriages, 15 rehabs.
Yeah.
And he made it out. He made it out. He made it out. And those were his words. It's like we got to see the journey. And he had a lot of issues, with his family and not being
really shy guy, right?
Very shy. He was I have a very similar personality to him in a lot of ways. Obviously the relationship with his brother. So for me, making the movie, I'm constantly thinking about my own brother. And, it's that thing you asked me about, the Long Riders, or the Wright brothers. It's like I've done movies about brothers.
Incredible,
and, and he was the little brother. And his older brother was a big star. And before Greg joined the band. But Greg, I think, is one of the greatest blues singers of all time. And he was, the other thing that I loved about him, which, I was taught to walk by a black woman, and my whole family was, when I was a little boy, I lived in a part of Texas where it was very segregated. And I didn't understand it, and I didn't like it. I would ask my dad, I said, why can't Selena makes dinner, why can't she have dinner with us? And so for the rest of my life, I've made movies about integrating, about that trauma that was passed on. It's passed on to generations. Racism is taught. You're not born with that shit. So Greg, he didn't see it, race. His best friend was Chank, and he was taught to sing by all the black singers, and his mother, one of the scenes, she comes home, Hank Moore is there, and they'd met him they'd been hearing him sing down at the club, and they said, Hank, you want to come over to the house? And they're sitting in the living room, they set up all this stuff, and the mom comes in and she's freaked. What's the black guy doing in the house? And she goes, come into the kitchen, I want to talk to you. What's that guy doing out there? She said, hey, Mom, that's Hank Moore. He's not black. He's a musician.
Wow. Yeah, he was really colorblind.
Yeah.
Deep in the South.
Deep.
Deep in the South.
It really resonated with me. So he was a deep guy, and he wrote incredible songs. You really get down into those lyrics that are pretty special. But that I thought was, for me as a filmmaker, and something to look at his character. You know, all of these people have that in common. Linda and Cash, they were colorblind.
Do you know what else I find a theme with you that I personally, and these great people, there's a real loyalty to people that have been kind to them. They don't forget.
That's true.
No matter who it is in their lives.
Yeah.
You are kind to everybody. People that have worked for you. You know, can we talk about your gardens? Can we just
Sure.
go off topic a little bit? Things. I mean,
My garden's kind to me. Yeah, I love gardening. My dad, when I was a kid, little boy, when I would get punished, which was frequently, I was acting out a lot because of what had happened to me as a kid. I was a little, so I got in trouble at school, I got in fights and stuff like that. I'd get punished by pulling weeds in the garden. Little did my father know that as I was pulling the weeds, I go, wow, look at this stuff. Look at all the life that's going on here. And I was fascinated with what was going on in the garden, whether I was, deadheading roses or whatever. So, and I always found that the plants, they loved being loved, and they gave love back to you when you nurtured them. I remember seeing a plaque once. It says, to be a gardener is to be in heaven.
Oh, it's beautiful.
See, I always found my church is the garden. I like studying religions, and I would often tell my children, what do you think of Catholicism? What do you think? I said, I think they're all the same in some way or another. I said, what's the best language? I would always use this. I said, do you like English? Do you like French? So what are they all for? To communicate. And that's the same thing to me about religions. They're trying to communicate with a higher power. I find my higher power. Sometimes I can be in a church. When we were working on this movie about Valdosta, which is it's a very black community. You'd love this little film that we did. And I was with a guy a reverend who rode with Martin Luther King. They were both reverends. He was a young reverend at the time. And this guy, so filled with God, and it was just beautiful. And, it was like, I find that in the garden. I find what he was feeling. I find that, and especially I'll see Nancy picking blueberries, all these things and after the fire, our house completely burned down, but the garden, a lot of the trees, the tops of them burned, and all the stairs, the wooden stairs, but a lot of it survived. And now, I've rebuilt it, but the ashes made the fruiting so powerful. There was so much fruit. It was like there was God just saying, hey man, I'm here and life will go on. We will literally rise out of the ashes.
Wow. And
that was the message to me. So, so I don't know if I'm going to rebuild yet. I don't know if I'm going to have time, but I don't know if I'll have when I say I have time, I don't know if I'll be able to wait out the 5 years it's going to take. But my garden will certainly be incredible, more incredible than it is now. And it's pretty incredible. It's really special.
I think probably some of my favorite moments we've had is you walking me through your garden and telling me about each thing that you're growing. You're so childlike.
Yeah.
And you know so much about it.
Yeah.
You really know your shit about
I
plants.
do. I could. I have people, I go plant their gardens for them.
And you I
get off on it. It's like making a movie to me, but it's like, it's the gift.
It is your church.
It is. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I see these little, right now, the avocado trees, all the tops of them burned. I thought, oh, they're done. They're pushing so much fruit right now.
Wow, man.
It's little tiny baby, you see a little tiny seed, and then all of a sudden there's a little avocado, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, and you can see plants grow overnight. It's really weird sometimes. When you get into the solstice, all of a sudden the sun and the moon and all the stars, they change And all of a sudden,
Mm. Mm.
and I think we are all human plants. Okay. And so if we nurture ourselves right and we take care of ourselves correctly, I think it helps. I talk to the plants. My hero was Luther Burbank, who was a horticulturist. And he actually created a spine. This is a movie I really want to make. He created a spineless cactus. It's a true story. Yogananda called him a saint among the roses. And if you look at the autobiography of a yogi, you'll see it right there at the beginning, right? It's dedicated to Luther Burbank.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Look at you dropping some real truth here, bro.
Saint among the roses. He created a spineless cactus, and part of it was talking to this cactus to get it to. He also created 800 plants and vegetables. And the church shut him down because nobody but God can create plants and vegetables. And Burbank would say, "Well, what if God's working through me?"
Wow.
The hypocrisy of certain religions, and their doctrines. It's not the principles, it's the personalities, truly, in that sense. And I would say that's probably true for the Muslims and the Christians that go crazy, Hasidic Jews that are so right. It's when they make it about their personality instead of about what it's supposed to be about, which is love. Right?
Amen.
So he talked to the cactuses with the big fronds. So he literally would rub his face against them, and there's stories of him with hundreds of thousands of needles in his face. And eventually the cactus, he would say, "Drop your thorns. You can trust me." And eventually he created a spineless cactus. His dream was to end world hunger.
Wow.
By planting this and this deserts, because the cactus holds water. So then the cattle could forage, and the spineless, they could eat the cactus and have water and have nourishment. So I discovered this. One of my girlfriends in high school, Liz Boyd, said to me, "You should do Audubon and Luther Burbank." She says, "You should go." I was having a place in Mendocino when I was really young. I was still in my 20s when I discovered this guy. And I went to his gardens in Santa Rosa, and there was this huge cactus plant. And on the outside, it had grown its thorns back. It's where people had carved in it. I think kids had come in there and put their initials or like graffiti.
Oh, wow.
And you go to the middle of it and you touch it. It's like touching a baby's ass.
Really?
It's so smooth. Yeah. So
I love that, man.
It's a trippy story, but it's a movie I'd like to make. I don't know if there'll ever be an audience for it, but I don't know. If you can do the imitation game and make it a success, I think you could do this.
I think you could do something there.
Yeah.
Listen, you've been in recovery for 40 years, right?
Yeah.
What's a great takeaway for the audience? What you've learned? I mean, you're such a student. What are some great takeaways for you?
Well, the first one is it's not wasm, it's ism. And you can't take anything for granted. No matter how it's not about success, and it's not about failure when you fall down. We're human. We're human, and that's what you have to remember. And you have to be able to forgive yourself for whatever's happened. Whatever. Even if you're sitting in jail and you've killed somebody, there is redemption of the soul. But you got to do the work. You have to do the work on yourself, and you have to carry the message. The 12-step program, I'm often reminded, of it wasn't originally for alcoholics. It was for everybody. Those 12 steps were for everybody to carry this message, and all who suffer. Right? It's an orderly way to live your life. And so taking inventory upon yourself, it's not beating yourself up. It's not shaming yourself. It's just looking at the truth, and as best you can. And then to say you're sorry to somebody, to make amends, it heals you. Except when you hurt somebody else. You don't want to do that either. There's so many people who do that shit and they're doing it for themselves. No, you're doing that to help the other guy. You're helping yourself, and then to carry the message and to carry the message by the way you live, by the efforts that you make. not by the accomplishments that you have, because that's a fucking trap.
Mm-hmm.
That accomplishment game is a fucking trap. Excuse my language, but it really is. And it can really mess you up.
Yeah. Okay. That's good, man. Can we do some rapid fire and I'll let you go home to Nancy?
Yeah, I'm good, man.
Yeah, you good?
Yeah.
All right. First film that made you fall in love with movies?
John Wayne and the Searchers.
Oh, Searchers.
I'd say it's Stanley Kubrick, Dr. Strangelove.
Okay. The best advice you ever got from your brother, Stacy?
The best advice I ever got from Stacy. Yes, I now remember. I remember we were making The Wright Brothers, and I was out there, and the director was being. I guess I did. Maybe I did do the lines the way he wanted me to, and he was not very kind to me. It's possible I didn't. I fucked him up. And he said, Stacy looked at me because I was ready to lose my temper because I have a very bad temper sometimes. He said, "Hey man, grace under pressure."
Oh, wow.
Grace under pressure. Keep it behind your teeth.
Grace under, or as we also know as pause when agitated. Or
Pause when agitated. There it is.
Dodgers.
What about them Dodgers? Greatest baseball game ever played was 2 nights ago.
Right. Favorite line you've ever delivered on camera?
Poor little pooch.
What's the most inspiring person you've ever worked with?
I would say the most inspiring person I didn't get to work with was Colin Powell.
Wow.
But that I met, that I had time with.
One word that describes Hollywood today.
A mess.
The secret ingredient of a great film.
Truth.
If you got dinner with any filmmaker living or gone, who would it be?
I would say Cocteau.
Favorite moment on a set you'll never forget?
Again, I think it was the vacation. That scene. It was just.
Nothing about it. The most underrated actor you've ever worked with?
I would say Reese. Wow. Reese Witherspoon. I think she can do a lot more than she's doing. I think she's incredibly talented.
The thing that scares you the most?
Me. I mean, my dear friend Ken Midlock, who's a professional baseball guy, he said, "My mind is like a bad neighborhood. I don't want to go in there by myself."
I love that.
That's, it's like the voices that never stop,
What's one word of advice you got to a young artist today?
Don't give up.
What's your personal definition of success?
Follow your heart.
A habit or ritual that keeps you grounded?
Prayer.
Your go-to film when you need inspiration?
The Godfather.
Finish this sentence. Life's too short not to.
Live out loud.
Amen, brother. Thank you, James. This is really special. I really appreciate you being here.
I enjoyed it. Time went by fast.
Time went by fast,
yeah,
right?
It did.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown. The Seano Show is a production of iHeart Podcasts, hosted by me, Seano McFarlane, produced by Pod People and 28th Ave. Our lead producer is Keith Cornelek. Our executive producer is Lindsay Hoffman. Marketing lead is Ashley Weaver. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.